We were never taught what old age is actually for. Think about that for a moment. We spent years in school learning history, mathematics, how to read and write. We watched our parents work, save, plan for the future. We were given a roadmap for almost every season of life. How to grow up, how to find work, how to raise children, how to build something. But no one, not a single teacher, not a book, not a conversation at the dinner table, ever sat us down and said, "This is what the final chapter is for. This is why you're still here." And yet, for generations, Native American elders have known exactly what that answer is. Not as a philosophy, not as a theory, but as something lived, passed quietly from one generation to the next, spoken beside fires and underneath open skies, in languages that understood time very differently than we do. What they say will completely change how you see the years ahead. And I'll tell you this right now. The answer isn't what most people think. It has nothing to do with rest. It has nothing to do with retirement. It isn't about slowing down or stepping aside or waiting for the end. It is about something far more powerful than any of that. First, let's talk about what the elders say you were not put here to do in your final years, because understanding that changes everything else. There is a story that travels through many native traditions. It isn't always told the same way, but the heart of it never changes. An old man is sitting outside his home. A younger man walks by and says, "Elder, now that you are old, what do you do all day?" The old man smiles. "I am doing the most important work of my life." The younger man looks confused. He sees no tools in the elder's hands, no fields being worked, no children being chased. "But you are just sitting there," he says. "Yes," the elder replies, "and it took me 70 years to learn how." We live in a world that measures a person's worth by their output, by what they produce, by how much they earn, how fast they move, how full their schedule is. And when the years slow the body down, when the schedule empties and the noise fades, most people feel for the first time completely lost. Because we were taught that purpose lives in productivity. But the elders taught something different. They said that old age is not the end of purpose. It is the beginning of your deepest purpose, the one that could not come before, because it requires everything you have lived through to be possible. You were not put here in your final years to disappear quietly. You were not put here to simply wait. You were not put here to make yourself small so that younger people have more room. The elders were very clear about this. They said, the older you become, the more necessary you are. Not in spite of your age, but because of it. Now, let's talk about what that actually means. There is a word used in several indigenous traditions that has no direct translation in English, but its meaning roughly is this: the knowledge that can only be carried by someone who has been broken and healed. Not book knowledge, not information, something deeper, the kind of understanding that comes from having loved and lost, from having made mistakes you can never take back, from having survived things you were sure would end you. That knowledge, the elders said, is sacred, and it belongs to the community. It was never meant to be buried with you. In many native traditions, the elders were not the people who sat at the edge of society. They were the center of it. Young people came to them, not for answers necessarily, but for perspective, for the long view, for someone who had already walked through the fire and could say with honest eyes, "I know this path and I know what waits on the other side." Think about what you carry right now. Think about the relationships that taught you what real love requires, the losses that showed you what truly matters, the moments when you were wrong and humble enough to finally admit it, the mornings when life felt impossible and you found a way through anyway. That is not ordinary knowledge. You cannot Google it. You cannot learn it at 22 years old, no matter how intelligent or ambitious you are. You earned it, slowly, through decades of living. And somewhere, in your family, in your community, in the people around you who are still early in their journey, there is someone who desperately needs to hear what you now know, not as a lecture, not as advice forced upon them, but the way an elder would offer it, sitting beside someone, speaking quietly, letting the words land gently, like leaves on still water. The elders believed that one of the greatest tragedies in life is wisdom that dies unspoken, that a person could carry an entire library of hard-won understanding about marriage, about grief, about how to keep going when everything feels gone, and take all of it into the ground, never shared, never given, never received. They called this a kind of spiritual poverty, not just for the individual, for the whole community. So the first purpose of old age, as the elders understood it, is this: to find the words, to tell the stories, to sit with someone younger and say, "Let me tell you what I learned," Not what I was taught, but what I actually learned. That is a sacred act, and it is yours to give. Before we move to the next lesson, I want to share something with you. Many of the reflections I've been preserving, about aging, about inner peace, about silence, and the forgotten teachings of earlier times, have been gathered into a book called The Last Teachings. It's a simple conversation, written the way an elder would speak to someone sitting quietly beside them. If you'd like to go deeper into these teachings, you'll find the link in the first comment below. There is a teaching that comes from the Lakota tradition. It says that a person who carries an old wound is like a river blocked by stones. The water cannot move freely, and eventually it becomes still and dark. Forgiveness, in the elder's understanding, was never about the other person. Let that sit for a moment. It was never about deciding that what someone did was acceptable. It was never about pretending the wound did not happen. It was never about making peace with another person on their terms, or saying that what was done to you was right. Forgiveness, the elders taught, is about freeing yourself, because the person who hurt you has already moved on. They are living their life, perhaps unbothered, perhaps not even aware of the weight they left behind. And you have been carrying it, for years, for decades sometimes, feeding it with memory, reinforcing it with revisited pain. The elders spoke about this with great compassion. They understood that old wounds do not heal themselves. They understood that life gives us many reasons to close our hearts: betrayal, abandonment, cruelty, disappointment from people we trusted most. But they also taught that the final years of a life were a kind of invitation, a gentle, persistent invitation to set it down, not for them, for you. There is something that happens in the body when long-held anger is finally released, something that happens in the spirit. People who have done this work, and it is work, it does not happen overnight, often describe it as a physical lightening, as though something heavy they had been carrying so long, they forgot it was there had finally been placed on the ground. The elders said, "You cannot enter your deepest years dragging the full weight of your past." And there is something else they said about forgiveness that is less often spoken about. They said, sometimes the most important person to forgive is yourself. For the mistakes you made as a parent, perhaps. For the years you spent chasing the wrong things. For the relationships you let fall apart because you were too proud or too afraid or too caught up in a version of yourself that was never really you. For the moments when you had the chance to say something kind and said nothing. The elders held no contempt for this. They had all done it. Every single one of them. They understood that being human means failing, sometimes badly, the people and moments we love most. But they also believed, deeply, that the purpose of those failures was not to be carried forward as evidence against yourself. The purpose was to teach you. And if you had learned, and if you had become through those hard moments more patient, more honest, more tender, then the lesson had done its work. You are allowed to put it down. That is the second purpose, to forgive. Not as a gift to anyone who wronged you, as a gift to yourself, to the self that still has years of living left to do and deserves to live them without chains. The elders were great observers of nature. This was not incidental to their wisdom, it was the source of it. They noticed that the most important things in the natural world do not hurry. The oldest trees grow slowly. The deepest rivers move with a kind of quiet certainty. The eagle does not rush its flight. And the seasons. The seasons never skip a step, no matter what is happening in the world below. They also noticed something about human beings. They noticed that we spend the first half of our lives moving so fast that we cannot actually see what we are moving through. We are raising children, but we are also worrying about money. We are sitting at dinner, but we are also thinking about tomorrow. We are walking in the woods, but we are also composing a list in our heads. We are present in body but not in spirit, and we do not even notice because everyone around us is doing exactly the same thing. And then, if we are fortunate, the pace begins to change. The house gets quieter. The calendar empties. The urgent things slowly reveal themselves to have been, in many cases, not that urgent at all. And for the first time in perhaps 50 years, there is space. The elders said that this space is not emptiness. It is a gift. Because the things you could not see while you were running, they were always there. The beauty you walked past 1,000 times, the depth in the eyes of the person who has been beside you for decades, the texture of a morning, the particular quality of light at a certain hour, the sound of your own breath. These things do not require travel. They do not require money. They do not require youth or health or any special circumstance. They require only attention. And attention, finally, you have. There is a quiet practice that runs through many indigenous traditions, not meditation exactly, but something related. It involves sitting somewhere, outdoors if possible, and doing nothing except observing. No agenda, no goal, just watching the world be itself. The elders said this practice was one of the most powerful things a human being could do, not because it produces anything, but because it returns you to something that modern life has nearly stolen from us entirely, the simple, irreplaceable experience of being here, of being alive, of noticing it, of letting the morning be enough. The third purpose of old age, then, is to become, perhaps for the first time, fully present in your own life, to stop rushing through the moment toward some imagined future, and to let what is here, right now, be received. This is not a small thing. The elders considered it a form of prayer, but there's one purpose that stands above all others, and we'll get to that in just a moment. In many Native American traditions, the concept of ancestor is not something that begins after death. It begins now, today, with the choices you are making in this moment. The elders taught that every person is at all times building their ancestral legacy. The question is not whether you will become an ancestor. You will. The question is what kind. This is one of the most quietly revolutionary ideas in the elder tradition because it shifts the entire frame of how we think about old age. We tend to think about our final years as a time of receiving, of being cared for, of being supported, of gradually handing things over to the younger generation. And there is truth in that. The body does slow. Help is sometimes needed. There is no shame in that. But the elders said, even in the slowing, you are still building something. Every conversation you have with a grandchild is a stone in the foundation of who they will become. Every value you live by visibly, honesty, patience, dignity, generosity, is a teaching being absorbed by the people watching you, even when you do not know they are watching. Children notice everything, and they remember more than we think. They remember the way you handled difficulty. Whether you faced hard things with grace or bitterness, whether you spoke about other people with kindness or contempt, whether you found reasons to be grateful, even when life gave you reasons not to be, they will carry those images with them for the rest of their lives. Long after you are gone, in moments of their own difficulty, they will ask themselves, consciously or not, what would they have done? How did they move through this? You are that answer. You are building it right now. The elders spoke about this with great seriousness. They said that one of the deepest responsibilities of old age is to be intentional about the legacy you are leaving. Not in the material sense, not what you leave behind in a will, not the property or the savings, but the spiritual inheritance, the stories you tell, the emotional tone of your presence, the way you speak about life, about time, about what matters, the degree to which the people around you feel loved, seen, and worth something, simply by having been near you. That is the inheritance that shapes generations. There are families who carry light forward, and there are families who carry wounds forward, not because anyone wanted to, but because the wounds were never healed, never spoken, never transformed into wisdom. The cycle continues until someone, somewhere, decides to break it. The elders believed that old age was precisely the time for that transformation, that a person who had lived long enough and honestly enough could become the one who stopped the cycle, who chose consciously to pass something different forward, something better. They called this one of the highest callings of a human life, not fame, not achievement, not the accumulation of anything, but this, to become someone whose presence made the people around them more whole, and whose memory, years and decades after they were gone, still made those people feel less alone. We started this conversation with a simple question, one that, remarkably, almost no one in our modern world asks out loud. What is old age actually for? And the elders, the ones who carried this knowledge across generations, in languages built to hold these truths, gave us 4 answers, not as commandments, not as obligations, but as invitations, to pass down what took a lifetime to understand, to forgive, not for anyone else but for the peace that still belongs to you, to slow down enough, finally, to see what was always there, and to become the ancestor your family will one day remember, not just with grief but with gratitude, with pride, with a sense that they carry something valuable inside themselves because of who you chose to be. There is a phrase used in the Ojibwe tradition. Loosely translated, it means, "We are the people our ancestors prayed for." Somewhere behind you, there were people who lived hard lives, made sacrifices, endured things you will never fully know, and they did it in part hoping that the ones who came after would have something better, would be something better. You are the answer to that prayer. And somewhere ahead of you there are people, some of them not yet born, who will one day be shaped by the choices you make in the years you still have left. The elders did not see old age as an ending. They saw it as the most meaningful stretch of the road, the part where the walking finally becomes prayer, where the living finally becomes teaching, where a person, if they are willing, becomes not just themselves, but something that continues. If these words have touched your heart, perhaps you'd like to explore The Last Teachings, a book I've gathered for people who feel this pull toward deeper understanding. Inside, you'll find reflections on solitude, relationships, inner peace, and what truly matters as the years pass. And as a gift, you'll also receive a special teaching called The Secrets of the First Hour, on the quiet morning habits that many elders considered sacred ways to begin the day. The link is in the first comment. If this changed the way you see your own journey, even a little, we'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below. Tell us, which of these 4 purposes resonated most with you? Which one do you feel is calling you right now in this season of your life? Because the elders also taught this. When wisdom is spoken aloud, it takes root, in you and in everyone who hears it. So speak, share. Let your reflection become a teaching for someone else who needed to hear it today.